The entire news review could be Greece, but we won't do that to our viewers.
We're not going to do that, no, it's not fair. There's a lot of other stories out there.
But let's start with Greece, because it's a big international headline. The FT, here it is. It says European leaders have told the Greek Prime Minister, Mr Tsipras, not to expect high-level negotiations at today's summit. They advise him rather to make a deal with his creditors first.
This is the front page of the Daily Telegraph, which has a warning from a group of business leaders who say to David Cameron, if he can't secure major concessions from Brussels, then he should be prepared to pull the UK out of the EU.
The French newspaper Le Figaro reporting that the Luxembourg-based telecoms company Altice has bid $11.4 billion for the French mobile operator Bouygues Telecom.
The international edition of the New York Times has the online trade in illegal drugs from China that are being exported to the United States. The paper highlights what it says is the ease in ordering an illegal and dangerous stimulant known as flakka that is illegal in the US but not in China.
The UK's Guardian reporting that a new Europe-wide police team has been created. It will track down key figures behind the social media campaign conducted by the Islamic State group.
And the Straits Times carries a front-page photo of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi performing yoga in New Delhi to mark the first International Day of Yoga.
Very bendy. I didn't do anything. Cornelia Meyer is here. Cornelia, CEO of MRL Corporation, a business consultancy. Good morning, Cornelia.
Good morning.
Does your opinion on the Greek crisis change from day to day, or is it pretty much the same all the way through? And what is it today?
It's pretty much the same all the way through. We will need to see an agreement, because not seeing an agreement will be just too dire. But the thing that I think the momentum has shifted from the talks about the Greek debt to the talks about the liquidity of the Greek banks. When you look at it, we had last week, we had $6 billion withdrawn, 1.5 billion euros alone on Friday. They needed an emergency line from the ECB of 1.75 billion. And, you know, this is a real sort of, this is not a run on the banks, but it's sort of a soft run on the banks. And the problem is, yes, you can put in capital controls, as Cyprus did. However, Cyprus is an island, so it's easier to control these controls. But Greece has very porous borders, what, you know, hinders people going in and out, you know, into...
With cash.
With cash.
In suitcases.
In suitcases, yes. So you, and maybe not the most effective border control either. So I think this is really, of course, it's a big story what's happening, but it's also, we also do need to watch what is happening to the liquidity of the Greek banks.
There's something quite interesting you were saying to me, Cornelia, we've not had the conversation on air yet, is what the shift you've noticed in Germany.
Yeah, the shift
Angela Merkel, Wolfgang Schäuble, that kind of shift.
I've noted when Angela Merkel is starting to worry about her legacy, so clearly she doesn't want to be the chancellor that sees Greece leave. She also is starting to get quite cross with the Greeks, because she feels, you know, she's been very patient. But she's also starting to get a little bit cross. Reading the German press, I've just come back from Germany, a little bit cross with Mr. Schäuble, because he and Mr. Varoufakis really have made not getting on an art form.
They don't get on at all.
They've turned this into an art form.
Do you think, actually, that the damage has already been done? Because the negotiations from the Syriza party, from Mr. Tsipras's point of view, may have possibly damaged his standing with all of his creditors so much that they're thinking, the next time we lend these guys money, they're going to create this problem down the line again.
Yeah, I think it has created a big problem. But what is also a big problem for him is 71% of his people in the latest poll say they want to stay in the euro. So yes, they don't want to see more austerity, but the Europeans have been quite forgiving. They said, well, maybe you shouldn't cut again the pensions. Maybe you should just go up with the pension age. So the Europeans are actually quite flexible. They need to, you know, the Greeks now need to, what we call in this country, show willing. They need to show willingness to do something. And some specificity. It's always faulted by the Greeks saying, yes, we'll do something, but not be specific. So they need to say, this is the new pension age, and just be very specific.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Figaro puts it on his front page as, wake up, Mr. Tsipras.
Yes.
You know, this is a bit like you saying, show willing.
Now, the Daily Telegraph is looking at the other debate with regards to Europe and the UK that's rumbling on in the background here and will gather momentum in time, whether we should stay in the European Union or whether we should exit. And this is talking about a study called Change or Go, and the Telegraph describes it as the most detailed fact-based report produced to date on the UK's membership of the EU. So just tell us a bit more about who's behind this.
Well, you know, you have some very, very big people behind this. You have Helena Morrissey, who is a very famous fund manager. She also has about 50 billion under management. She also is the founder of the 30% Club. And you have Mr. Moynihan. You have some very, very sort of weighty people behind it. I'm a bit surprised, frankly, because they're very specific, and they say, you know, we need the Parliament needs to be able to give a red card, you know, vote on certain things that are decided in the EU. They need to sort of cap the budget of the EU. They need to sort of be less. The EU needs to be less stringent on telling what one can do in sort of social and employment legislation in Britain. So they have quite strong targets. But what bothers me a bit about this is they say only 5% of companies export to the EU, and I don't quite know how that works because the EU is our largest trading partner. So I'm not quite sure how the numbers work. You know, we haven't had time to look into the numbers. To me, it seems dangerous because we do benefit from the exports of the EU, and a lot of the investments, you know, the car manufacturers who invested here, they're not invested because of us Britons driving their cars. They're invested because they get access to the European market.
This story in Le Figaro about this offer from this Luxembourg company for Bouygues Telecom, 10 billion euros, $11.4 billion, it suggests the industry is in good shape.
Well, it would suggest that certainly Patrick Draghi is in good shape. He's been on a spending spree of $30 billion. He will, if he buys this, he will be bigger now than Orange, and Orange has pretty much up to now had a monopoly on sort of the mobile side in France.
We're seeing a lot of deals in the telecoms industry. We're seeing, you know, quite a few here in the UK, some in the United States. Are we going to get to the point where there's just too few players? This one of the issues in this article is talking about the fact that regulators may not like this. Yeah,
exactly, because what you're seeing is you're seeing consolidation, but then the industry was so fragmented, you know, with the tech boom and everything, that usually when you see, you know, lots of small companies, we will see this now in the shale industry in the US, when you have lots of small players, at some stage there needs to be consolidation to get the scope and scale of the larger corporation.
And in the International New York Times, essentially that's the big issue with the internet. How do you police it? If you can buy illegal drugs in another country, presumably
they're not
all
illegal.
you need is for that package not to be checked when it arrives in your homeland, and they can't check everything.
No, they can't check everything, and it's not illegal in China, but it is illegal in the US. And then what's really disturbing is that some of this is going to Mexico, helping the Mexican drug lords be more efficient. So this is not. It would be nice if China sort of showed that it's really a part of the international community and sat down with the Mexicans and the US and said, okay, we understand this is a problem, how can we help you? But, you know, it's the would have, could have, should have debate.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to The Guardian, it has both of our last stories on the front page, actually. European-wide police unit to target ISIS web accounts. That's an enormous job in itself. And you can see Narendra Modi there as well. Bend it like Modi. Yeah. So you pick.
I will pick ISIS. I will pick ISIS. I will pick ISIS, of course. Well, you know, this is a big problem. It really is a big problem, and one does need to, on a European-wide level, attack it. Because if you look at how many German young men and women have gone in to fight with ISIS, we have about 700 of our people, Britons, who have gone in and fought with them. So it does need to be tackled.
But when you look at the numbers, I mean, looking at 100,000 tweets a day that are pumped out by key figures within ISIS. Yes. I mean, how do you monitor?
I'm sure there's very good technology out there, and I'm sure our friends in MI6 have access to that technology. It's, you know, what worries me also about this whole. This is very tragic, and we need to monitor it. But it worries me that a lot of people now equate Muslims with extremists, and it's such a small, tiny fragment that are extremists, and the large majority are wonderful, members of European society. As the former German president said, Germany used to be about Judaism and Christianity. Now it's also about Islam. The same holds true here. The same holds true all over Europe. So it's a sad thing to see how this tiny segment gets us, radicalizes the view of we have.
Cornelia, Meyer, thank you very much indeed for your opinions this morning.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye.